Welcome to Venture Podcast, presented by VNTR, the world's leading investors community, the place to learn from VCs and capital allocators.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just build it the old-fashioned way. Invested everything I had, borrowed $100K on my credit cards, missed over the course of 2 years payroll 27 times. But I raised 1.4 million in like 5 and 10K increments. I would meet someone like, hey, I have this great startup. You need to invest. I'd get like 5K here, 10K there. And I would make payroll just through the 5, 10K I would find here and there. But finally, and it took a long time to like get the first music licenses, get the first operator. But then they're kind of lemmings, and once I had won, all of them wanted to sign, and so it created a wonderful snowball effect. So revenues went from 1 million in 2002. 5 million in 2003, but almost all that in Q4. So the first 9 months were very painful. But on August 15, 2003, we became cash flow profitable, became masters of our own destiny, and the sleeping in the couch of the office, living off ramen noodles, which I'd done for almost 2 years, was done. It was like, yes, I can pay the employees, I can pay back my credit card debt, I can actually get an apartment, pay rent, etc. And then we went to 50 million in 04, 200 million in 05. So 1 to 200 million in revenues in 4 years. Only raised 1.4 million in like seeds, fools, friends, and family money.
Hey guys, welcome to the NTR podcast, and today we are hosting Fabrice Grinda, founder and managing partner at FJ Labs. Fabrice, welcome. Please introduce yourself, and we prepared cool questions to ask you through the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Just brief background. I'm French originally, though I've been a tech founder and investor for the last 26 years. I built multiple venture-backed companies, the largest one of which is a company called OLX, which is over 10,000 employees in 30 countries. It's like Craigslist on ride for the rest of the world. And I'm an investor in 1,100 startups, and I've actually exited 300 of them. So I've done rather well, both as a founder and an investor, and it's been an amazing ride, which continues to this day.
Amazing experience. Thanks.
I mean, look, if you want a more detailed journey, I'm happy to do that as well. That was like the the elevator pitch. If you want the full play-by-play and how I became founder, investor, etc., I'm more than happy to do that as well.
So let's start with your entrepreneurial journey. So you started multiple ventures. The biggest is OLX, but what is your journey? How did you get started as an entrepreneur?
I would say it all began kind of randomly in 1984. I was 10. I got my first PC, and it was love at first click. You know, I got my PC, and I knew we were meant to be together forever. Like, I love the idea of like programming. I built built-in board systems. I'd like, I mean, it was like it was a PC. It was a compact 8088, and very rapidly realized that it was an amazing way to express my creativity and ambition. My role models at the time were Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and I went to the top school in France. So I was winning all the Olympiads, et cetera. And they were like, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I'm like, I want to be a tech founder like my role models and idols. And they were like, what? You would betray the ideals of the French Socialist Revolution. And I thought they were kidding. And I laughed out loud. And of course, they weren't. So I'm like, okay, I need to go to the US to live the American dream. So in 92, I was 17. I went to Princeton for college. And I already knew tech, like in fact being way more so than like no one else was like tech foundry at that point in time. So like, you know what, I'm going to study economics and mathematics because to me it explains the way the world works, and I think it's intellectually interesting. Though I studied everything and anything, and at that point in time, the web started exploding, right? Like, so Netscape, Mosaic, Gopher, Mosaic, Netscape, Amazon was released. And I knew I wanted to be tech founder. But when I graduated, I was 21. I topped my class in 96. I'm like, 21, I'm shy, I'm introverted. I've never really, I built a little tech startup, but it was like sole proprietorship, no employees. It helped pay for college, but that wasn't big. If I build something bigger, I'm probably going to fail. Why don't I go to McKinsey? It's like business school, except they pay you. So I went to McKinsey, and by the way, the path, I could have created a company, probably would have failed, would have learned a lot. Could have joined a company. I was 21, would not have taken me seriously, but you learn on the job. So I think all three paths would have been viable. But anyway, picked McKinsey, business school, except they pay you. learned what I need to learn in terms of oral and written communication skills, business analysis skills, presentation building, team building, etc., and went on to build a startup. So in '98, didn't have any brilliant ideas, but I'm like, I like marketplaces, and I see this thing called eBay, and they're creating liquidity and transparency in opaque, fragmented markets. They're not doing it in the rest of the world. I'm going to take the idea and bring it to France. And so essentially it helped bring the internet revolution to France and Europe writ large. I was 23. I raised 63 million in venture money, grew the company to 10 million a month, 150 employees. Unfortunately, grabbed defeat from the jaws of victory. Even though I had gone from 0 to 100, so 0 to hero, the bubble burst. The company that bought us saw their stock fall 99.98% from 10 billion to 30 million, lost everything. And I thought, okay, it was, in my defense, I'd wanted to sell it for eBay for cash. And my majority investors said no, which is why, sadly, we grabbed defeat from the jaws of victory. And I'm like, you know what? I didn't do this for the money at the end of the day. I like being in tech. I like building something. I'm going to stay in tech, even though the internet is going to be this niche little thing with no money in it. It doesn't matter. It's where I want to be. And in 2001, I'm like, okay, what can I build with the capital constraints where no capital is going to be available? I need something I can make profitable reasonably quickly. And I had seen that ringtones were big in Europe and Asia, and they were not yet in the US. So I'm like, you know what? Let me come back to the US. Let's go build a ringtone company and get the licenses, deal with the operators. The first years were extraordinarily tough, right? I couldn't raise a single dollar of VC money. I don't think I'd finished the call that they'd hung up because every B2C company in the US or in the world had gone under. eToys, Webvan, Cosmo, Pets.com, very famously. And frankly, every telco company had gone under, like MCI, WorldCom, etc. So there was no VC money to be had. And I'm like, you know what? Gonna just build it the old-fashioned way. Invested everything I had, borrowed 100K on my credit cards, missed over the course of 2 years payroll 27 times. But I raised 1.4 million in 5 and 10K increments. I would meet someone like, hey, I have this great startup. You need to invest. I'd get 5K here, 10K there. And I would make payroll just through the 5, 10K I would find here and there. But finally, and it took a long time to get the first music licenses, get the first operator. But then they're kind of lemmings, and once I had won, all of them wanted to sign, and so it created a wonderful snowball effect. So revenues went from 1 million in 2002, 5 million in 2003, but almost all that in Q4. So the first 9 months were very painful. But on August 15, 2003, we became cash flow profitable, became masters of our own destiny, and the sleeping in the couch of the office, living off ramen noodles, which I'd done for almost 2 years, was done. It's like, yes, I can pay the employees, I can pay back my credit card debt, I can actually get an apartment, pay rent, etc. And then we went to 50 million in 04, 200 million in 05. So 1 to 200 million in revenues in 4 years. Only raised 1.4 million in seeds, fools, friends, and family money. And this time sold the company a bit, it became profitable. So we made 4 million profits in 05, in 04, and 7 or 8 in 05. Sold the company a bit too early, but this time for cash, and better too early than too late, as I'd learned before. So this time grabbed victory from the jaws of defeat, and I sold it for 80 million in June of 04 to a publicly traded competitor. And it actually was fun. I stayed on for 18 months. We were going out from strength to strength. We were a rocket ship. So we went from 25 employees to 50 to 100 to 200 to 250. We were adding product categories. We're getting ready for the smartphone transition. But ultimately, the people that bought me didn't let me. I could have bought Shazam for $1 million. I could have, there's so many opportunities, and they said no, send the profits back to Japan. After 18 months, I'm like, you know what? I like marketplaces. I should go back to my first true love. And Craigslist had come of age, and I'm like, Craigslist is amazing, but they're violating the principles of providing a proper public service to the community by not moderating, not eliminating scam and phishing, and also by not modernizing the UX UI. So I offered to buy them. They said no. I offered to run them for free. They said no. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to build better version of Craigslist for the rest of the world. So went on to create OLX. We first launched in 100 countries. It really, really worked in 4, which were Portugal and Pakistan, and then of course India and Brazil. So we focus on these four. Use the one there and use the profits there to then re-extend to 30 countries at the end with 300 million unique visitors per month. We are part of the fabric of society in like Brazil and pretty much all of Latin America and the UAE and all the Middle East and India and Pakistan and most of Southeast Asia and all of Eastern Europe. We have 50 million people who make a living off the site. I mean, it's ginormous. In order to win, though, because it's winner takes all, we had to fight a huge war with a big publicly traded competitor. And in 2010, I went to my American VCs and I'm like, hey, we need hundreds of millions to spend on TV ads in like whatever, Pakistan. And they were not enthused by the idea. I think in 2015, by the way, it would have worked. And so I ended up partnering with a publicly traded media company from South Africa called Naspers, now called Prosus. And they invested hundreds of millions in the company. They gave me the means to fight the war. So I fought the war, won, merged 5149 for us versus our biggest competitor. And then in 2013, seemingly on top of the world, but I was like, this big company, we're publicly traded, is not really fun anymore. I want to go back to the building I sold to Naspers and went on to my next journey. So that gives you the VC-backed entrepreneurial journey until 2013.
So you kind of gave up on building?
I disagree. I did not give up on building. For two reasons. One is, what did I do afterwards? I didn't just go join a fund. I could have joined Sequoia or whatever. No, I decided to go build a fund. Building a fund is like building a startup. You need to raise capital. You need to hire the team. You need to find a thesis and a strategy. You need to find the culture. I mean, it is actually a startup. You're losing money for the first so many years. You're not covering with management fees the cost of the operations, and I like building companies. And so as part of the fund, we have a studio business where we help build companies. And so I ended up building a mobile classified company that was called Solid, that I ended up merging into a mobile classified company in Spain called Wallapop. I became CEO of the US, chairman of Spain, and then we merged it with Letgo, which then merged with OfferUp. So I built that and that into a very big company. Wallapop's really worth like $1 billion, whatever. And then the more recently, and we've built like 10 companies over the years, I just built a yield-bearing stablecoin and tokenization company called Midas. Came up with the idea, hired the team, et cetera. So I'm still building, and I'm still building at my fund, in addition to being an investor.
I was teasing.
No, I know. No, but look, it's a fair point. And I thought long and hard, like, should I go and build another venture-backed company? And I actually like the idea of doing that. The issue is, once you've reached a certain level of success, I have no fear of failing. Like, I failed my way to success. It's more to justify the opportunity cost of my time. It has to be big. And the problem is ahead of time, like ex ante, it's hard to know if something's going to be big or not, right? Like Uber was originally like a black car service for rich people. It didn't feel very big, which is why Garrett chose to do StumbleUpon and gave Uber to Travis. Or Airbnb. It's like inflatable mattresses in people's living rooms. It didn't feel big, just big. Ended up being, in both cases, much larger ideas. And so I never found an idea that I'm like, oh, I need to go all in, do this, other than sell it, Wallapop for a while. And I liked investing, I like building, and so FJ Labs became my structure for that.
And you said before you've invested in 1,100 startups. Over how long? That must be some sort of record for a VC.
Yeah, and by the way, as a builder, I built my own AI recently for fun. So 1,100 startups. So I started angel investing when I became a founder back in '98. So, but most of the investments, of course, came after I had money and time. But back in '98, I was CEO, very public CEO, the cover of every magazine. And so a lot of other founders started reaching out to me and said, hey, can you invest in our startup? Of course, I had no money, so it was like, look, I'm happy to take some advisory shares for being in for helping out and writing small checks, but I really can't do much of that. And I thought long and hard, should I be an angel investor in parallel to being a CEO? I mean, clearly it is a distraction from my core mandate as founder to go and be an angel investor. And ultimately, I'm like, you know what? If I can articulate lessons learned to others, it means I've internalized them, and I understand that I really understood them. And number two, I'm running at that time first Auckland, then OLX, which are multi-category horizontal classified sites and auction sites. Meeting all the verticals and understanding the trends in the verticals and keeping my fingers on the pulse of the market also makes me a better founder. So as long as it doesn't take too long, like 1 hour meeting and I decide yes or no, it's fine as long as I only focus on my core. So back in 98, I'm like, I can be an angel investor if it's in marketplaces, and in a 1 hour meeting, I say yes or no. And so I created the 4 investment selection criteria back then that I still use to this day. Now it's 2 1 hour meetings now. It used to be 1 hour meeting, but now the deals are filtered before they get to me. And so I started angel investing in 98. By 2013, when I left OLX, I'd already had about 173 investments. We had 37 exits, was crushing it. And so I like building companies. I like investing companies. Let's create FJ Labs, originally as a family office, really, to go and build and invest in tech companies. And that took a life of its own. And other people started saying, hey, we want exposure to what you're doing, which allowed us to raise our first formal venture fund, FJ Labs 1, in 2016 with 50 million of external capital. But the scale and the volume has increased, the velocity has increased. Now we're investing about 150 to 200 new companies a year. But for many, many years, it was like 5, 10, 20, 30, 40. So yes, we've invested in 1,100 companies, probably not as a traditional or an angel, a VC or a seed stage VC is probably up there, but there are a few models like that. Kima, Box Group, and of course YC is way more prolific because each of the batch of YC is like hundreds and hundreds of companies. So the high velocity approach is reasonably unique, but probably we're not the most prolific investor out there. But yeah, so it's been over 26 years, but most of the investments I would say have come in the last 6.
Well,
And do you recommend other founders to start investing early, like you did, or at what stage do you recommend them to, diversify a little bit?
So look, the best time to start investing is when you have capital and time. So after you exit, when you're a post-exit founder and you've joined, VNTR or whatever, your community, that is the time to start investing. I liked doing it because I think it's a reflection of my intellectual curiosity. There's so many problems in the world, and all these founders are amazing, and they're trying to solve the problems. And each problem is one founder going after it, or actually multiple founders going after it on average. And so it was a way to address my intellectual curiosity about what was going on in the world, and it was a way to keep my tabs on the pulse of the market. Because when your head's down, you don't actually really realize what are the changes that are happening out there. So I don't think it's for most people. You need to be able to context switch. You need to have the time to be allocating that and to be willing to make decisions with imperfect information in very limited time. So I think most founders, I would say, wait until you exit. But for a few of them, why not?
So exit could be also like some cash out
Yes.
in growth stage rounds,
It
not
could be that, especially if you have
necessarily
more,
completely
especially if
selling
you have
the
more time.
company. Yeah.
You have a CFO, you
Yeah,
have a COO, you're no longer working 100 hours a week, you're only working 60 hours a week.
exactly.
Then
Yeah.
what are you going to do with the other 40 hours? Go angel investing. But I can
Exactly.
tell you that when I was running OLX, which is thousands of employees in 30 countries and angel investing like crazy, that was not the most recommended lifestyle choices. I mean, I was
Yeah.
working over 100 hours a week, 7 days a week, for like years. So, because essentially I had 2 full-time jobs. So, not,
And did you have family at that time, or you
no,
were single?
no, of course not. No girlfriend, no kids. So, you need to be at the right place for it in life as well.
Yeah. And how did you define your investment thesis? So you mentioned you had the passion to marketplaces, but like did it shape over the years?
Oh, yeah. So I like marketplaces. I'm an economist by formation. I studied market design in college. I like the fact that it's all about creating liquidity, and if you create liquidity, you unlock massive value. And I know how to solve the chicken and egg problem of like, would you start supply or demand? How do you match them? How do you measure elasticity of supply and demand, et cetera? And if you're a 23-year-old, also, it's a lot easier to go and build a marketplace than it is to go build an Amazon where you need billions of dollars of like inventory, supply chain, warehouses, or E-Trade where you need like a banking license, et cetera. So it was also pretty well suited for me. And because I was running a horizontal site, I'm like, I need to keep my fingers on what's going on in the vertical. So the thesis, it's always been around network effect and marketplace businesses because they're capital efficient and winner takes most. But the details have evolved over time. At first, it was verticals, so instead of eBay, it's like StubHub or Airbnb or Uber or whatever. Then it became changing the dynamic by which the marketplace operates. So at first, it's if you're on Angie's List or Upwork, it's like you say what you need and hundreds of people apply and then you interview them and you pick them. I mean, it's a shit ton of work. It's a double commit marketplace. The modern model is the marketplace pick model. You say what you need. The marketplace says this is the person for you. Uber kind of falls in that category. You don't pick your driver. Uber picks the driver for you. But that you can do in every category. You can do it for HVAC installation, heat pump installation,
like
getting
massage and
exactly
all these verticals.
You can do it for every vertical possible, including also products. Like they can tell you which product you need and find it for you instead of giving you 27,000 choices that you need to go and pick through. So marketplace pick models, and more recently, it's been B2B marketplaces, right? Like in your consumer life, your quality of life is extraordinary, right? Like you have DoorDash and Instacart and Uber and Airbnb and Amazon. You can get anything you want in like 2 days max, and often like 30 minutes
or 15.
Exactly, or 15 if you go to Getir or whatever. And yet in the business world, nothing has been done, right? If I want to order petrochemicals, there's no list of what's available, just a list. Not even an online buy button. There's no connectivity to the factory to understand manufacturing capacity and delays. There's no online ordering. There's no online payment. There's no tracking. There's no financing. And this needs to happen in every category, in every vertical, in every geography. So for all inputs need to be digitized, and this is like sub 1% penetration. And this is trillions and trillions of GMV in like steel and machine parts and whatever. To SMB digitization, right? Like every small business owner we know, like a restaurant owner. Why did he become a restaurant owner? Oh, I like to cook. I want to chit chat with my employees. And yet, what are you doing today? Oh, I'm creating a website. I'm managing my relationship with OpenTable and TripAdvisor and Yelp. And I need to manage a delivery fleet. I need to negotiate Uber and DoorDash. I need to get a POS like Toast. I need to do inventory management, accounting. I mean, this is a skill set they don't have. And so SMB enablement, digitization, and then the entire supply chains, which have been very manual and obtuse and full of different intermediaries need to be digitized. So that's really B2B, digitizing B2B supply chains writ large, which is a combination of B2B labor marketplaces, B2B re-commerce, SMB enablement, marketplaces for discovery of inputs, and moving supply chains out of China and digitizing them, and all the payments and infrastructure layer around it, like digital freight forwarder like Flexport, is what we're focusing on right now. And everything remains to be done. We're like day zero of digitizing the B2B world.
So we didn't hear any AI in what you were telling.
So
how does AI fit in all this?
Well, a few things. So first of all, in life, I think it serves you well to be contrarian. In 2021, when everyone else was like investing like crazy, in February 21, I wrote a blog post called "Welcome to the Everything Bubble." Because of overly loose fiscal and monetary policy, everything's overvalued. And I really meant everything: real estate, bonds, equities, SPACs, NFTs, crypto, public, privates. And I'm like, if it's not anchored to the ground, sell it. And we obviously did that. While everyone else was going crazy and buying at insane prices, we were like selling in secondaries. In 23 and 24, everyone else was like, I'm overexposed to venture, like peak to trough, like 75% decline in venture investments. So I'm like, no, now's the time to invest like crazy in areas where no one else is focusing on, like B2B marketplaces. And you avoid AI because that's where all the lemmings are. Like everyone else is AI all the time. Now, the time to invest in AI was actually 5 years ago when no one else was focusing on it. And I think we invested in DeepMind pretty early. We didn't invest in OpenAI for a number of reasons, but like a lot of it were like structural, like non-for-profit, where the founders have any equity. It was like a lot of things didn't make much sense. And we're only now starting to make sense. And now it's too late for us. But like the people that missed the boat on OpenAI or DeepMind, they were like, oh, we need to invest now. And they're investing in like non-differentiated LLMs with no differentiation of the data, no clear business model, no real moats at insane prices. The median seed is 3 and 9 pre. The median A is 7 to 18 pre. Median, the mean is higher. The mean is like 3 at 12 and like 10 at 30 pre on the A. But like in AI, I'm seeing deals at like 100 pre, 200, 300 are like nothing. And it's going to end in tears for multiple reasons. Each time OpenAI does a new release, it like kills more and more of these companies. Many of these are non-differentiated, and there's no real monetization. And so even an acqui-hire is not going to save you if you raise a too high price. So, but the funny thing is, everything we do has AI. So every company we invest in is the early adopter of AI. So every company we invest in uses AI to improve customer care. Every company we invest in uses AI in order to improve program and productivity. Many use AI to improve flows. So many of our marketplaces, including the incumbent ones, are like, okay, we use it to make it easier to sell. So Rebag is an example. Rebag is a handbag marketplace. They do like hundreds of millions of revenues. They're profitable. They have all the data of all the handbags. They know the condition, the price, the model. And so imagine that you want to sell a bag on eBay. You need to take 20 pictures. You need to pick a category. You need to write title. You need to write a description. You need to find the condition. You need to set a price. Here with the AI called Claire, you take a few photos. It tells you model, condition, price, sell, done. 1 minute, maybe 30 seconds. And this is happening in every major vertical. So AI is an integral part of all the companies we invest in, but they wouldn't define themselves as AI companies. Now, we do invest in AI companies. About 9% of what we invested in last year is AI. And by the way, like of the latest batch in YC, I think it was like 90% AI companies, right? Or many of the funds are like 90% AI. We will do AI when it's vertical on proprietary data sets in categories with a viable business model and willingness to pay at valuations that are reasonable and are close to normal median seed A, et cetera valuations. So there's been a few of these. We're investors in Photo Room, which is an AI to change the background of items so it increases the sell-through rate of marketplaces. We're an investor in Numerai, which is like a hedge fund type company where people upload their models, they fight and then they invest alongside it, create a virtual hedge fund without any analysts, and then they pay back part of the profits to the people that created the models. We're investors in a company called Hero Stuff, which is like a one-click marketplace for selling through AI, where it creates beautiful listings based on a few photos and a voice description. So we do AI, but again, it's 9% of what we do, and we also do picks and shovels of AI, like we're in Nexus and things like that. But we've been very careful because a lot of it is like just a random co-pilot with no value add at an insane price, no willingness to pay. It just doesn't make sense to me. And by the way, I know a lot about AI because I've coded my own AI for over a year, and I went through the entire. I used LangChain and Pinecone, and it barely worked. Worked way better than
Tell us more
GPT-3.
about that.
Yeah.
Tell us more about your AI.
Yeah, so I built Fabrice AI. It was really an intellectual exercise, and I'm like, I want to understand when people are pitching me, what is hard, what is easy, what is differentiated, what could anyone replicate easily, and because on a regular basis, where a lot of people ask me questions as a founder, as an investor. It's like, hey, what are the valuations which are we raising at? How do I write a deck? What are your current thesis? What is FJ Labs' thesis? How do I pitch FJ Labs? Like, I would keep getting the same questions over and over again. And I have a blog, and I do go on podcasts, and I have my own podcast. So I have actually a fair amount of content. So I was like, hey, can I create a digital representation of myself that could answer all of the questions that I'm getting on a frankly daily basis? To make myself more scalable and efficient. And so my blog and my podcast is really everything I wish I knew when I was 23 and starting out as a founder that I now know. And it was like, can I codify that in an AI? And so about a year and a half ago, a year and 3 months ago, to be clear, I'm like, okay, let's see if I can code Fabrice AI. And so I went down the path of grabbing all my content, digitizing it, which first took an infinite amount of time because I had to transcribe every podcasts into text. And I use AI for that, obviously. I had to codify who is the speaker is to make sure that it's figuring out who I am. I transcribed. I use Azure OCR to transcribe all my PDFs into text. Um, I use OpenAI to like translate all of the podcasts in other languages because I speak multiple languages into English. Created the data store. Then once I had the data store, I created the JSON files and I started uploading it. Just used the API that GPT had created, and I tried GPT-3 and 3.5, and the results were awful. Absolutely awful. Like they were so bad that I would be ashamed of putting it out there. So, and I kept trying and working. So started using MongoDB, by the way, for like storing the data, the structuring the data in the right way. So it should be called pretty quickly. Then I'm like, okay, let's try LangChain, let's try Pinecone. Results got a bit better. Then I'm like, you know what? Let's use the GPT builder that OpenAI created, and I built a builder. I put an assistant. The issue with the GPT builder is, of course, you need to have a paid OpenAI account to be a user. You can't embed it on the website. It worked better, but not that well. And then finally, a year and a half, 4.0 got released. They created an API where I could just upload all the JSON files from my like MongoDB database, and like everything started working. And so a year and a half of coding for nothing. I could just wait it for 4.0. But now I have Fabrice AI, and it is extraordinarily good, nuanced, thoughtful answers. It makes inferences that I would not have thought of. But everything, I was like using a open source, but little by little, OpenAI has replaced all my backends. Even my text to voice, my voice to text was an open source product, but then Whisper is multilingual, it works better. So then I coded. I mean, that was a hard integration because it doesn't work natively in web app. I coded the integration, so I'm on Whisper, and currently I'm coding an avatar version of myself with HeyGen. And so I looked at 20 competitors. All the work I'm doing with HeyGen, I am willing to bet in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, GPT-5, 6 comes out, it's going to integrate it and it'll be wasted time. But the point was not actually even to create Fabrice AI. The point was to understand how hard is it to do, what is easy, what is hard, what is replicable, to make myself a more knowledgeable about the space. And it also turns out that it is getting a lot of use. I mean, again, relatively speaking, but I probably have more traffic on my AI than I do on my blog, because I think people are lazy and they'd rather ask the question and get the answer than like actually go and read long form posts, because my posts are like 20,000 words long, and it's gone really well. So what I'm currently coding is, can you pitch Fabrice AI your startup? You upload your deck, you pitch it, ask all the questions. I don't know if I'm going to succeed, by the way. So I'm using all of the pitches FJ Labs is getting, all the debriefs we write, to see if I can train the AI in a way that you can pitch it. Because every week, and we didn't talk about it at some point, we should cover how we evaluate startups. But every week we get 300 inbound deals, and we take 50 calls. And because the other ones are out of scope, or there's too many doing the same thing, we want to wait around, or they're doing hardware, whatever. And then we take second calls with maybe 10 of them a week, and I take second calls with like 5 per week. So of the 300 companies pitching us, I talk to 3 or 5 per week. And this would be a way for people to talk to. Even if we think it's not for us, you can get good feedback, etc. I don't know if I'm going to succeed. It's going to take me a year to get enough data to like train it. But it's super fun. And in the meantime, I think it's made me a better AI investor, because I've come to realize most of the ideas people were pitching me for like various co-pilots, like I could code that in a week. Like there's nothing there. It's just a sales it's a sales
And
game.
do you code it all yourself, or you have a team of developers supporting you?
I mostly coded it myself at the beginning, and then I started hiring a bunch of people to help me. So especially the current version where we're trying to upload, or I'm trying to teach Fabrice AI to like write the same debriefs we do and give a recommendation. I need a lot of help because we need to connect to Affinity, which has all of our CRM, which has all of our debriefs, which has all the decks. And so that I'm not coding myself. I hired a team in India to help me with that. But a lot of it I coded myself.
Amazing.
So let's talk about your kind of
And
how
by the
you
way, it's
get the
easier and easier to code
300.
these days. You have a coding question, you ask GPT. I'm not a good coder anymore. Whenever I forget something, it's like, hey, I want to do this. Send me the code. And literally these days, again, not a specific questions, not programs. Like, how do I whatever? I want to change this embed of YouTube from vertical portrait to landscape. How do I do that? And it gives you 5 things. You take one, boom.
What language? What language do you code?
It depends, but like mostly mostly PHP and MySQL. Yeah,
Cool.
and I'm on WordPress for my blog.
So like you mentioned, it'd be great to understand how you get from that 300 down to 50 and then 10 and 5. If you've got like a strict set of rules or if it's just feel.
No, we have a strict set of rules. So the 300 inbound is by 100 come from other VCs, 100 come from the founders we backed in the past. So it's about 2,000 founders and 1,100 companies, and 100 is like cold inbound, mostly to my LinkedIn, but kind of everywhere, email, whatever. If it's the type of things we look at, a marketplace, seed and A, or B onwards, we're more likely than not going to take it. But we do get a lot of pre-seed. We're more selective because what happens often is we see 10 people switching at the same idea at the same time, and we'd rather wait until we figure out which one. We don't back competitors, so we want to wait until there's one that like emerges as the winner before we wait. So pre-seed, we often we're going to wait, especially if it's a little bit out of scope. And then all the rest, like hardware, biotech, green tech, space, whatever. Like if it doesn't have a marketplace network effect component, we're just not going to take a call because it's not for us. Of the 50 things we get per week that are on for us, we take a call. We have 10 people in the investment team. Their deals are randomly assigned one of the 10 people, and we take a 1-hour call. On the 1-hour call, we evaluate 4 things. We evaluate, do we like the team? Now, of course, every VC in the world will tell you, oh, I only invest in extraordinary people. The thing is, it can't be like porn. It can't be, oh, I know when I see it. You need to be able to articulate what that means. So for us, an extraordinary founder is someone who's both a super eloquent, visionary salesperson and knows how to execute. So we want the Venn diagram intersection of salespeople that are very eloquent who know how to execute. And the way we tease out how whether they can execute in a 1-hour call is number 2 selection criteria. Do we like the business? What is the total addressable market size? What are the unit economics? Even pre-launch, we expect the founders to be able to articulate, oh, I've looked at like keyword analysis on Google and Facebook, which is my primary paid acquisition channel. This is the keyword density. This is average CPC. This is the landing page analysis. We spent $1,000. This is what the landing page looked like. Conversion rate was X%. We expect Y% to buy. And by the way, that Y% better be the industry average. And the way to compare to unit economics is the average order value we're expecting is this with this recurrence, which better be the industry average again, not 5x better, and with this following margin structure. And I care about recouping the fully loaded costs on a contribution margin 2 basis in 6 months, 3xing it in 18 months. So I want good unit economics. And people that can articulate the unit economics typically understand well their business. And if they're not there, I need them to be explained why they're going to get there with scale over time, which, as you get more density, purchasing power, whatever, you may be able to improve them over time if you're not there today. So number 1, do I like the team? Number 2, do I like the business? Number 3, do I like the deal terms? Now, nothing's cheap in tech, but is it fair? Is it fair in light of the team, the traction, the opportunity? And number 4, do I like the thesis? Is it an idea I care about in a category I care about in line with my vision of the future? And I've clear theses on the future of mobility, of real estate, of food, of transportation, you name it, solving one of the 3 problems I'm focusing on right now, which is inequality of opportunity, climate change, and the mental and physical well-being crisis. And I need all 4 to be true. So it's not 3 out of 4, it's all 4. We need to like the team, the business, the terms, and the thesis. And if all 4 are true, then it goes on to a second call. On the second call, we dive in deeper in competitive environment, things that were not clear where they're going to get to with a fundraise. And if we like them, then we invest. So we invest in 2 1-hour meetings over 1 week. We're like, we're in, we're at, and if we're not in, And many VCs, I don't understand, like they are not polite, they ghost people, they don't. But if we're not in, we'll tell you why we're not and what would need to change for us to change our minds.
Well,
And it's about a
there's a lot
1%
to.
conversion rate. 300 deals, 3 investments per week. So 1% from pitch or deal coming in for us to us investing, which is about 150 new investments per year. But with the follow-ons, et cetera, is like 200 to 250 investments per year.
And what's your average check size?
We are very dogmatic. So the same way we're programmatic in the way we evaluate, we're pretty programmatic in the way we invest. Our pre-seed is 150, our seed is 300, or A is 500, and our B is 700. And we can sometimes double that if we have super conviction. And so blended average check size is 400K. Because we're mostly seed and A. We're also mostly US, so we're 70% seed and A, 20% B onwards, 10% pre-seed. We're 50% US and Canada, 25% Western Europe, 10% Brazil, India, 15% rest of the world.
And you mentioned before that the best time to invest in AI was 5 years ago. Like, just out of interest, what's the thing today that you think in 5 years is going to be the AI?
The problem, so the most exciting company in my portfolio is an AI company. And I think they could very well be a $1 trillion company, but I also think it's too late to invest now. But it's a company called Figure AI, and it's the leading humanoid robotics company in the world. They've hired the very best talent in AI and robotics to create Figure 2 right now, which is already live in the factory at BMW, replacing a bunch of machinists and doing really well. But the team is extraordinary. And given the trajectory they're on, I can imagine there's going to be a Figure 3 that's a lot better and cheaper in like a couple of years, and a Figure 4 a couple of years after that. And I can see a path where not that long into the future, like 4 or 5 years into the future, you're going to have affordable humanoid robots that are going to be common by the millions in both the factory and the home. And I think Figure AI is probably a year ahead of Tesla in the game, with much better products in AI, and years ahead of the other players in the Chinese. So I think that company is one of one, and they're very unique and special, and the founder is extraordinary. It's definitely the most exciting company in the portfolio from an AI perspective. But the current, if you were to invest now, it's probably, I mean, I don't know what the next round is going to be, but the last round is already $3 billion, so it's going to be a lot.
Nice. And so you mentioned that there are lots of cold outreach. What is the ratio investing in cold outreach versus referrals?
So first of all, we actually do look at the cold outreach and we do invest in it, which is not at all the case of 99% VCs, where like deals at Sequoia probably goes straight into a burn junk mail folder that is never read and will never be looked at, and maybe will preclude you from being invested in ever in the future. Some of our very best deals were cold, because what happens is, if you're a first-time founder from a non-traditional geography, you're in Albany, New York, you're in Belo Horizonte in Brazil, you did not go to Stanford. Of course, if you went to Stanford in computer science, you're going to know people in tech and VC. You're going to be able to get a warm intro. But if you're in, same thing if you're in Sao Paulo or whatever, but if you're in like Belo Horizonte or Albany and you went to secondary school, you may not have the connectivity but what ends up happening is you're more resilient. you go a lot further with a lot less capital, and we end up investing in some of these companies at much lower valuation, much higher traction. We invested in some of these like 2 million a month in revenues at like 10 pre, which would be a Series B level traction, and like you'd be raising 15 at 50, not 2 at 10. And we're also more in a position to help them with fundraise. But to answer the question, because you asked the ratio, so a third of the deals are coming from the VCs, and it's about 55% of the companies we invest in. A third of the deals come in from founders, and that's about 30% of the deals we invest in. And a third of the deals come in cold, and that's about 15% of the deals we invest in. So the ratio is lower from it's 100 deals well, of the 300 deals, we do 3, but only 15% of the 3 if you want. Over the course of the year, I guess I'll just make the math easier. We do 200 deals, and of the 200 deals every year, it's 30 deals that are coming from cold.
So you do recommend founders to reach out to you in the cold manner as well?
No, I recommend that they try to get a warm intro,
Okay.
preferably from another VC or a founder. But if you do not have a way to get to me because that's not your network, you can send me an email, a LinkedIn in-mail. But I will only reply if in that message you explain what you're building, the traction you have, and you include the deck. If you're like, I have a great idea, I'd like to talk to you about it, you will not get a reply. I need to be able to make the decision as to whether or not to take a call based on the message you send me. I have zero time for chit-chatting. So you need to give me enough information to make an assessment as to whether or not this warrants a call in the message you send me.
Amazing. Good. And so you mentioned kind of what other advice you would like to give other founders in when they build startups, right? It's kind of now it became super cheap to build new ventures, right? Like you yourself building Fabrice AI, in your
zero money.
garage, yeah.
So, I mean, also zero business model. It's not a business. I mean, just do it, right? Like here's a mistake I find many founders make. They're like, oh, I need to raise $1 million to go and launch a startup. That is a very bad sign. The pre-seed, which is pre-VC, which is Fool's Friends Family, you should be able to go very far with very little capital. And there are very few pre-seed funds. There are a few, right? There's Afford, there's Amplify, etc., that write like $250K checks. But for the most part, you should be able, with almost no capital. Like today, I think I could build. You give me $20K, I could build anything. And that's hiring an external team of developers or whatever on Upwork. And many things that can be coded with no code, low code. Like if I'm building a marketplace these days, I'm going to use Shopify. And yes, you need the seller component where you do need to code a way for people to list. But I would use most of the tools out there off the shelf, prove that the economics work, and not really think through it. So if you come to me and you're like, I need $1 million to build it, it's a quasi-automatic pass. You go and build it, get a little bit of product, show that you have a bit of product market fit. What VCs want to fund is scale. We want to scale you. If you're like, oh, I raised whatever, $500K from friends and family, we're live, we're doing $20K a month in MRR. And now, but I know which customer acquisition channel works. And I don't care what the channel is. It could be TikTok, it could be paid, it could be SEO, it could be influencers, it could be a sales team, it could be outbound, inbound. You need a scalable, repeatable acquisition channel with good economics. And you're like, now I'm raising a seed. I'm raising 3 and 9 pre to scale from whatever, 20, 30K a month in MRR to 150K a month in MRR. That makes sense to me. And so launch, be capital efficient, prove product market fit, then you go to the VCs. Don't go to the VCs saying, I need money to launch. That proves you don't know what you're talking about. And it casts a doubt on your ability to execute and makes us not necessarily believe you're going to get there. Now, of course, if you're a second-time founder or third-time founder, you've done it before, we'll believe you're going to be able to execute. But as a first-time founder, prove it.
And just speaking about your top investments so far, I mean, you said you had 300 exits out of the 1,100 so far, which is a really good ratio. What were your top, and did you kind of know they would be your top at the time, or were they kind of surprising to you?
So first of all, what is a top investment, right? The top investment could be by multiple, by absolute dollars, and by IRR, all of which are different metrics in different companies. So the top by multiple, I definitely did not think it was going to be the top by multiple ever. It was a gaming company out of Turkey, which we invested in because our inbound analysts who just joined said, you need to invest in the company. Even though it's gaming, even though it's Turkey, the way our investment committee works is we work We do not require consensus. We don't even require a majority. If anyone, even the incoming analyst who's 21 and it's his first job, says we need to invest and pounds the table, we will invest. We'll size down, we will invest. So we invested in this company called Gram Games, and they tried to build a Clash of Clans or Supercell for emerging markets on Android, and it failed dismally. Company was essentially going bankrupt, and I think we had signed the liquidation docs. But one of the engineers, for fun, I'd built this tiny little game, and they're like, "Hey, let's release it. You never know." And instant global sensation is a game called 1010. It's kind of, or 3. It's kind of like 2048, 2-4, and the company realized, you know what? Why build complex games with actors and stories and graphics when you can build casual games? They became a casual game publisher and developer, and after almost dying, literally, we had signed the liquidation docs. It went from strength to strength. Zynga bought it for $250 million plus 3 years of profits, and I think the profits were like 35, 100, and 250. Right, like the earnout was bigger than the buyout. I mean, it's like mind-boggling. And we made we only put it for 50K because it was like tiny check because our analysts insisted, and the 50K became like 20 million. Like, so a multiple, definitely did not expect it. If you'd asked us to rank the company, many times it would have said bottom 5% of our portfolio companies, and yet ended up being the highest multiple ever. So you get lucky, better lucky than good. And things surprise you, and they surprise you in both directions. You have companies that were like billion-dollar unicorns crushing it that die, and companies that are dying that like figure it out and like take off and exit. Other very big absolute dollar successes were Alibaba. I studied Mandarin at Beijing Normal University back in '94 while I was at Princeton. I spoke to Jack Ma in '99. I tried to buy Alibaba.com, the domain from him, because I wanted it to be the domain for my eBay of Europe. Didn't convince him, as you can imagine. And then later ended up investing pretty late, like at a 15 billion valuation at like $4 a share or whatever. But it was obvious to me it was going to be big, and the opportunity was huge, and started to monetize, and eventually they went public and grew even more. And I think I put in like $1 million that became 50 million or whatever. And then Coupang, same thing. It started as a Groupon of Korea, so we passed. Then it became one of the many Amazons of Korea, so we passed, and then became the leading player in Korea in the Amazon category. So we invested, and then eventually went public, did very well, very, very successful in absolute dollar terms, but not in multiple, because we invested at a pretty high valuation to begin with. I think maybe $1 billion to start. And so yes, we sold for 50 billion, but we invested $1 billion. IRR.
So you don't mind to invest in billion valuation as well, right?
We wait until there's a clear winner. So as I said earlier, we don't invest in competitors, and so,
Right.
and I don't want to invest in underwater economics. So it's not our bread and butter, right? Our bread and butter is seed and A. But let's say at the A, there's 7 companies doing the same thing. They're all doing well with all amazing teams.
So you wait.
If I invest in the wrong one, I lose the opportunity to invest in the category forever, and so I wait. And in the case of Coupang, we saw it early. We saw it earlier. It just didn't make sense to invest earlier. It was Groupon. Didn't like the Groupon model. It was one of 5 Amazons. It wasn't clear. Then finally, it was time to invest. And IRR was we invested in Skip the Dishes, which is a DoorDash for Canada, and they got acquired 6 months later. So I don't know, 5x, 10x in 6 months. It was like 10,000 IRR or whatever. It did really, really well. So sometimes, again, that wasn't why we invested. We didn't expect to exit that quickly, but we were able to help them. They were very happy with the investment. We were very happy. We've backed them in the next companies. And yeah, so no, these things surprise you in both directions.
And how do you monitor these companies that you liked, but you were not ready to invest? It's kind of, how do you keep track of all these?
Yeah, so when we pass in a company, we have multiple states. So at the end of the investment committee, we do an investment committee every Tuesday for 2 hours. So we had one today. We invested in a few companies. We have a status like we invested, so we're moving in a portfolio. Well, we passed forever. We didn't like the founder, we didn't like whatever, or we pass and reconnect, and we put an active in 6 month, 9 month, 1 year. Let's reconnect to check where they're in, and we sometimes do that 7 times until we finally invest.
And founders are ready to reconnect every time.
Yes, because we treat them well. We're like, look, this is the reason we're not doing it. And it's usually logical, but we'd love to. Not everyone is up for it. Some people get pissed because we pass, but we are honest and transparent. Many VCs will just ghost you, and so yeah, no, they're happy to. They're mostly happy to reconnect. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's relationship building, right? So over time, you might invest in the same founder again and again, right? So
we've done it many times. So
not
Figure
in
AI.
this
Yeah. So actually, we have a non-standard policy, which is if you've done right by us, we will back you no matter what you do next. So we backed Brett Adcock in his first startup, which was at Vettery, a labor marketplace for programmers. Grew to 100 million in sales. We sold it at Deco for 100 million. We made 8x for investment in a couple of years. Very happy. He's then like, okay, I'm building a flying electric taxi company, like called Archer. I'm like, okay, here's our check. We didn't even take a call. We didn't even look at the deck. We just wired the money, and then took that public, did very well. And then he's like, now I'm building a humanoid robot company. I'm like, okay, here's our money. It doesn't matter the terms. Doesn't matter. Like, take it. And so if you've done well by us, we will back you again and again and again, no matter what.
Amazing. And so at what stage you felt like you're ready for a family, right? It's kind of I saw you have little kids, and it's kind of you were crazy working hard to get there, right? It's kind of
Yeah, I mean, I never thought I wanted a family. To be clear, I thought the data in the world when you're a super ambitious, happy guy, you talk to your friends who have kids, and all of a sudden, A, they disappear from your life. B, they stop being the individual or even the couple, and they become the parent. And C, when you meet them, which is very rare, it's like every 2 months, it's like, oh, I haven't slept, and my life sucks, I can't do anything fun, and my kid's this, my kid that. It's like, it wasn't a very compelling pitch, right? Like, I'm like, yeah, not for me. I don't want kids. I love my life. It's perfect. And it happened kind of randomly. I randomly did ayahuasca ceremony, and again, many people do the ayahuasca ceremony because they're like looking for their life's purpose or like trying to heal past trauma, etc. Like, I'm super happy. I'm like, it just so happened like the time I could spend the 10 days before preparing ride, like no caffeine, no sex, sleeping, meditating, no meat, full fast, like really creating the right environment. I did it in a deep jungle of Bushwick, so I didn't need to go very far. And like, I'm like, why not? And why not? Same thing. One of my defining traits is curiosity. What is there to the nature of reality? This could be fun and interesting. I didn't expect anything out of it. And my grandmother came to visit me. Grandmother, to be clear, had passed like 20 years earlier. And the message I got was amazing. It's like, you're living your life's purpose. Everything's amazing. You're fulfilled. You're doing what you should be doing. I don't know if it's but it's definitely and or but. Here are a few ideas for you on the margin. So first of all, you're a force of nature. If you want to make something happen, you can make it happen. But when things you try and they're not working, don't force them. It's not meant to be for you. Now, it only works if you've really tried hard. So, and I tried really hard to like build a community and a studio in Dominican Republic, and there was a combination of like corruption, crime, tropical diseases. Like nothing was going well. So like kind of the message was move on, which is why I moved my secondary residence from Dominican Republic to Turks and Caicos, and was the best decision ever. But she said, hey, you should revisit the kid thing. So the reason you're not compelled is your life is amazing. It's rich in adventures and friendship and love. And you have your dogs and business. Like everything's great, and you think it'll only be a negative, like all your friends. But she was like, the cost of having kids can be lower than you think they are. Meaning, and I don't mean financial costs; those are always high. I meant cost to your quality of life. Is like um, other people live once they start having kids, they substitute their lives for being parents. But the kids can be a complement to your life. You can go heli skiing and take your kids. You can go kite surfing and take your kids. You can go hiking and take your kids. So it doesn't need to be an or. You can continue living.
You can do everything together.
You can do everything with your kids, and you
Yeah.
can continue to be the individual, the couple, and be the parent. And you don't, and knowing your personality, you don't need to be. You're never going to be a helicopter parent. You're going to be less fair, inspire, not like go to every soccer match and this is like this is not you, and it doesn't need to be you. In fact, the way other people do it is probably bad for them and bad for the kids and bad for the relationship. So A, the costs are lower than you imagine, and B, the benefits are greater than you imagine. Like you like to speak, you like to teach, you like to present. You're teaching classes at like different business schools. You're creating a blog and a podcast in order to not to have to go to be more scalable. Teaching your kids is going to be even more amazing because it's going to keep you young. You're going to recognize yourself in it, and you're gonna find it extraordinarily compelling. So the pitch ultimately became the costs are lower, the benefits are greater, it'll be a complement to your life, and a substitute for it. You should try it. And I left that ayahuasca ceremony. I'm like, okay, we're doing this. And she also said I need to have a son and a daughter at least one of each because they're different. Or your relationship between them is different. And so yeah, her name was Francoise. She was my paternal grandmother. She was a very forceful influence in my life, and as a result, my son is called Francois, and he's now 3. And it took me a while because I'd like make sure I pick the right partner, get an egg donor, la la la. So it's complicated. But now I have a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old, and it's perfect. I mean, they've been sleeping through the nights at the beginning. We love each other. We have all the fun. I took my son. I put him in the e-foil. I took him kite surfing. I took him heli skiing, rock
Yeah,
climbing.
I
Yeah,
saw the person
we
videos.
have a blast. And my son a few weeks ago asked for a brother, and he's 3. And people would not take this seriously. But I'm like, you know what? I see it as a sign of what the universe wants. And I actually had a long conversation with him. I'm like, you realize if we have a brother, he's not going to come out like fully formed, ready to play. It's like it's going to be, breastfed for 8 and not non-functional. It's like, yeah, I realize, but eventually it'll be fun. It'll be there. I want a brother. I'm like, okay, we're doing it. So now I'm like getting a surrogate and all that stuff. No, it's amazing. And in that same ceremony, by the way, I was visited by a white wolf that said, "Hey, you realize that like the Jon Snow's direwolf ghost is not just a fictional, but is based on an actual dog. It's a white German Shepherd, and you should have me. You're an epic guy. You need an epic dog, and I'm the dog for you." So I also went to find a breeder, and I now have my white wolf, Angel, and it all came from that. So yes, but I decided that late. I decided that ceremony was in November 2018. It took a while to get everything ready. So I got my son in 21, my dog in 23, my daughter in 24, and I guess my next son will either be, yeah, probably in 26. So not even, I mean, I have an embryo. I don't have, the rest needs to be planned, but yeah, I'm working on it. So I came to it late in life, but it's been amazing. I don't regret coming to it late. I mean, I think it was the right time for me. But now I'm a convert, and I think families are amazing, kids are amazing. If I could have 100, I would have 100. But I also want to be a great father and present, and have a lot of fun. So I think it's going to be 3. I also have an adopted 17-year-old, so I guess 4, plus the dog, and it's amazing.
Yeah, sounds like you have a nice lifestyle.
Yeah, love my
Like
life.
you also a community builder, right? It's kind of
Yeah,
I see you're hosting lots of retreats and
yeah.
gatherings and networking. What is your favorite sport?
Like many things in life, I don't have a favorite. I have a lot of things I like.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
like curiosity and diversity. In my case, diversity really is the spice of life. So there are three sports I do well and often, which are padel, the racket sport from Spain,
Yeah.
paddle, and tennis, both of which I play very well. Um, Kite surfing, which I do a lot in, and I'm currently learning the wing foil to complement my kite surfing based on wind speed, and backcountry skiing. And I love all three, and I do all three extensively. But I also read 50 to 100 books a year. I also play video games. I also play ping pong, and I do a lot of like different things. I code my AI, and I host a lot of gatherings, intellectual salons. I bring I guess the community around me. My last name is Grinda. We call it the Grindaverse, and it's the family I have and the family I choose. So it's friends and family, and it's hundreds of people in it. And for every Christmas, like now, there's about 50 people who come here and we hang out. For my birthday last summer, there were 120 people, and yeah, it's amazing.
Amazing. No, that's great that you have amazing people around you. Great. Fabrice, thank you so much for joining us today. You shared lots of amazing insights. We would love to invite you to our next year Global Investor Summit in Lisbon on November 12th. I hope you will join us and we meet in
Unlikely,
person.
but
But let's try it. We will enable paddle games and tennis and surfing.
yeah. Look, one of my keys in life is I only do conferences if I happen to already be there and I'm the keynote. Like travel for work is not something I looked forward to doing. So I do structure my life in a very non-traditional way
Yeah,
between New York, Turks and Caicos, and Canada. Because all three of them, so I have beach, mountain, and city, complement each other, right? In New York, it's like a haven of intellectual, artistic, and professional endeavors. But if you're doing, you're not thinking. And after like 2 months of working 24/7, I'm like, I need a break. I go to
yeah.
Turks. I work during the day. I'm in Turks right now. We're doing podcasts, calls, emails, etc. But when I'm not doing that, I'm reading, writing, meditating, kiting, playing paddle, playing tennis. And then during the winter, I also like to go backcountry skiing. And so I do the same thing as Turks, except in the mountains, and also do that in August. So that's kind of my rotation: New York, Turks, Revelstoke. I had to go see the family in Nice. Lisbon,
Yeah.
November, maybe, but
Unlikely.
unlikely, unless for whatever reason I happen to be already in Europe, right? Like, am I going to cross the
Yeah.
Atlantic? No. But if I'm already in Europe because I'm visiting the family or there's something relevant for me there, in Europe it's different because, like, Nice to Lisbon, it's like an hour and a half. Fine. From the
So we'll
US,
be happy.
painful.
We'll be happy to host you in one of our 150 plus events next year,
Gladly.
and
Do you do
we
any in
we
the
will
US?
adapt it
In New York?
for sure. Yeah, we
See?
do.
New
Yeah,
York events. That I'm happy to do.
exactly. So we will meet you next year for sure, somewhere around the
Wonderful.
world. Yeah, nice to meet you, and thanks for joining us today. Thanks, Nico, and see you soon. And
Thank you for having me.